bet was stupid. The kind of casual cruelty that powerful men engage in when they're bored and drinking expensive whiskey in private clubs. "I bet you can't get your secretary to fall for you," Matteo said, leaning back in his leather chair. "She's not even attractive, Vincenzo. She's invisible. Make her believe she matters, then humiliate her at the gala next week." The room erupted in laughter. 5 men, all connected to the criminal underworld, all convinced that my secretary Olivia was beneath romantic consideration. I should have refused. Instead, I smirked and accepted the challenge. Her name was Olivia Mercier. She was 28 years old. She had mousy brown hair that never cooperated with styling. She wore oversized cardigans that hid her body, and she was, by those men's standards, absolutely invisible. What I didn't know was that my casual cruelty was about to completely destroy me. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, buckle up, because today's story is about a mafia boss who made a bet to seduce his ugly secretary, and then he actually looked at her. This is a story about how invisible women are often invisible because the world is too superficial to see them. Before we dive into this story of cruelty transformed into genuine love, make sure to smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because the moment she arrives is going to absolutely wreck you. This story has betrayal, redemption, transformation, and a love built on the ruins of casual cruelty. Now let's get into how a mafia boss learned that the most dangerous woman he'd ever met was the one he'd been dismissing every single day. The next morning I called Olivia into my office with the intention of beginning Operation Seduce My Secretary. I had a plan. Flowers, compliments about her intelligence, dinner invitations, the full arsenal of manipulation I'd perfected over decades. But when she walked into my office, something shifted. She was wearing the same oversized cardigan, the same practical shoes, the same minimal makeup. But I actually looked at her for the first time, really looked, and I understood why Matteo had made the bet. She was easy to dismiss. She was the kind of woman conditioned to make herself smaller, less noticeable, less worthy of attention. And I was about to weaponize that vulnerability for a bet with my friends. "Olivia," I said, my voice taking on the seduction tone I'd perfected. "I've realized something lately. You're the most important person in my organization. You're brilliant, and I don't think I've ever told you that properly." She looked shocked, genuinely shocked that her boss of 3 years had suddenly noticed she existed. "Thank you, sir," she said, her voice soft. Thank you." I handed her a folder. "I need you to accompany me to a business dinner tomorrow. Wear something that makes you feel beautiful, not comfortable." Her eyes went wide, and I hated myself for the flicker of hope I saw in them. The plan was proceeding perfectly, too perfectly. I sent her expensive flowers with an apology note for not recognizing her value sooner. I made sure to touch her arm during meetings, just enough contact to communicate I saw her as a woman rather than an employee. I complimented her appearance, her intelligence, her kindness, her quiet strength, and she began to transform. Not physically at first, though she started wearing clothes that actually fit, that showed her figure. She transformed emotionally. She smiled more. She spoke with more confidence. She began to believe she was worth noticing, and I was doing all of it for a bet, for money, for bragging rights with men who treated women like currency. The gala was scheduled for Friday. I'd instructed Olivia to meet me at my penthouse so we could arrive together. The plan was to have her fall in love with me, declare it publicly, and then for me to reject her in front of Matteo and the others as punishment. It was cruel in ways only rich, powerful men can be, systematically, deliberately, with full knowledge of how much it would hurt. But when Olivia showed up at my penthouse, everything changed. She was wearing an emerald green dress I'd had delivered to her address, a dress I'd selected specifically for her body type, her coloring, her beauty, and when she walked through my door, I couldn't remember why I'd ever thought she was invisible. The dress transformed her from invisible to luminous. But more than that, it was her confidence. She walked like she owned my penthouse, like she finally understood her own value, like the months of calculated attention had convinced her she was beautiful. "Do I look okay?" she asked, vulnerability still in her voice. "You look," I said slowly, and I meant it. Absolutely breathtaking. Her smile was genuine joy, and I realized with horror that I'd fallen in love with her. Not strategically, not as part of the bet, but genuinely, completely, in a way that made the entire plan feel like the vilest thing I'd ever participated in. At the gala, Matteo and the others anticipated the humiliation. I could see it in their eyes, the way they watched Olivia with barely concealed contempt, the way they waited for me to execute the betrayal. But I couldn't do it. I held her hand throughout the evening, introduced her as the woman I'm in love with, refused to leave her side for even a moment. When Matteo pulled me aside, his expression was confused. "What are you doing?" "The plan was to humiliate her," he demanded. I looked at him and understood I was about to sacrifice a significant friendship for the woman I'd been planning to destroy. "The plan was stupid," I said, "and I'm not doing it." But Olivia found out anyway. Of course she did. Matteo's girlfriend was spiteful enough to tell her, cruel enough to deliver the information designed to cause maximum damage. I came home to find Olivia sitting in my penthouse, her emerald dress replaced. With that oversized cardigan, her confidence crumbled, her eyes red from crying. "You made a bet," she said. Not as a question, but as a statement of fact. "You and your friends made a bet that you could seduce me, get me to fall in love with you, then humiliate me at the gala." She looked at me with such betrayal that I wanted to die. Everything was a lie. "Not all of it," I said desperately. "The first part was. The plan, the initial motivation, that was all real and terrible and something I'll hate myself for forever. But Olivia, somewhere between the beginning of the manipulation and tonight, I actually fell in love with you. I looked at you and finally saw you, and I couldn't go through with it." She stood up, her entire demeanor changing. She wasn't vulnerable anymore, she was furious. "You think that makes it better? That falling in love with me after deciding to destroy me is redemptive? That's not love, Vincenzo. That's guilt wearing a mask." She moved toward the door. "I quit. I'm leaving. I'm never seeing you again." She left, and for the first time in my life, I experienced genuine consequences for my cruelty. My organization fell apart because Olivia had been doing essential work that nobody else could replicate. More importantly, my heart fell apart because I'd destroyed the only woman I'd ever actually loved. I tried reaching out, but she blocked every number. I tried sending messages, but she deleted them unread. I tried seeing her in person, but her building had security that I'd paid for, and they refused to let me pass the lobby. She was gone, and it was entirely my fault. A month after she left, I did something I'd never done. I actually apologized. Not a strategic apology, not a manipulation tactic, but a real, genuine, complete apology. I wrote her a letter explaining everything. The bet, the plan, the moment when I realized I'd fallen in love with her, the absolute horror when I understood what I'd done. I wrote about how she'd transformed my understanding of beauty, of value, of what it means to truly see another person. And I left the letter at her building, knowing she might never read it, knowing she had every right to destroy it unread. She didn't respond for 3 weeks, but she did read it. I knew because her best friend, who worked as a chef at one of my restaurants, told me that Olivia had been crying for hours after receiving the letter. "She's not forgiving you," the friend warned. "But she's also not moving forward without hearing your side." I took that as permission to try again. But this time, I wasn't trying to seduce her. I was trying to become the man she deserved. The next communication was a text. "Coffee, public place, that's it." Just those words, and my entire world reorganized around redemption. We met at a small cafe in a neighborhood I didn't control. She looked different. Not worse, not better, but harder. She'd built walls my casual apology wasn't going to demolish. "I read your letter," she said. "And I believe you fell in love with me. I believe you couldn't go through with it, but love doesn't fix what you did. You made me invisible for 3 years, then visible only to destroy me. That doesn't get erased because you had feelings." I wanted to argue. I wanted to convince her that redemption was possible, that love could repair anything. But she was right. "You're right," I said. "I don't deserve your forgiveness. I'm asking for the opportunity to become a man who would never make a bet like that. I'm asking you to let me work on being worthy of you, not to win you back, but because it's the right thing to do." She studied my face for a long moment, and I could see her internal struggle, the part wanting to forgive me and the part protecting herself from further harm. "If I agree to see you again," she said slowly, "it's not because I'm giving you a second chance. It's because I need to understand how you could make a bet like that. I need to understand why I should ever trust you again." We began the slow process of building something not based on seduction or manipulation, but on genuine communication and honest vulnerability. I told her about my childhood, a father who measured everything by value, who treated people like assets, who taught me love was a transaction. She shared her story, how she'd always been invisible, how her mother said beauty was all that mattered, and since she didn't have it, she might as well disappear. "That's the horrifying part," she told me one evening. "You offered me something I'd been desperate for my entire life, and I would have done anything to keep it, including letting you destroy me. That's how powerful invisible people's hunger for visibility actually is." I understood then that my cruelty had worked precisely because I'd identified her deepest vulnerability and exploited it, and redemption meant not just apologizing for that, but spending the rest of my life ensuring she never felt that desperate again. 6 months of coffee dates turned into dinner dates. 6 months of rebuilding trust, of genuine communication, of me actually asking about her thoughts and feelings rather than just performing interest. 6 months of her slowly beginning to believe that maybe I'd actually changed, that maybe I wasn't running another con. And then one evening, I asked if she'd be willing to give me a real second chance, not as a seduction, not as manipulation, but as two broken people trying to build something genuine together. She said yes, but with conditions. "I'm never going to be invisible again," she said firmly, "and you're never going to let me be. If I disappear into myself, you pull me back out. If I start believing I'm not worth your attention, you remind me, because I'm not going back to that place." I promised her, and I meant it with every fiber of my being. "I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you know your value. Not because of how you look, but because of how you think, how you lead, how you love despite having every reason not to." The first time I brought her to meet my friends, Mateo's reaction was shock. "You're actually staying with her?" I realized then that Mateo's cruelty had been rooted in his own insecurity. He wanted to prove he could manipulate women, make them fall in love with him, destroy them without consequence. My decision to actually love Olivia was a threat to his entire understanding of power. I cut him out of my life that day, along with 3 other men who'd participated in the bet. I restructured my entire social circle around people who could see women as human beings, rather than objects to conquer or destroy. A year after we started seeing each other, I proposed to Olivia, not in a grand public gesture designed to impress my friends or prove my power. I proposed in the kitchen of my penthouse while we were making dinner together, and I asked if she would give me the honor of spending the rest of my life proving I was worthy of her. She said yes, and she cried, and she held me like I was the most precious thing in the world. "I never thought I'd forgive you," she said. "But you actually changed. You didn't just apologize, you became a different person." Our wedding was small, attended by people who actually loved us rather than people we were trying to impress. Olivia wore a dress that showed off her beauty, and I wore a suit I was comfortable in. We exchanged vows that were honest and vulnerable and real. I promised to always see her, to never let her disappear, to spend the rest of my life making sure she understood her value. She promised to hold me accountable, to call me out when I fell back into old patterns, to love me in ways that required me to be better than I'd ever been. 2 years into our marriage, I made another decision that shocked my organization. I stepped back from the criminal side of my business and focused exclusively on legitimate enterprises. Olivia had shown me that there was a way to be powerful without being cruel, a way to have success without destroying other people. "I don't want our children growing up knowing that their father built his empire on the suffering of others," I told her. She cried when I said that, understanding that my redemption wasn't about me anymore. When Olivia became pregnant, I was terrified. Terrified I would damage our child the way my father had damaged me. Terrified I would pass down the cruelty and need to control. But Olivia was patient. "You're not your father," she reminded me constantly. "You're the man who saw me when I was invisible. You're the man who chose redemption over cruelty." Our son was born with his mother's kindness and her ability to truly see people. Watching her hold him, I understood the best legacy wasn't power or empire. It was a son who would understand that women's value wasn't determined by physical appearance. 5 years after the bet, Matteo contacted me. He was in serious trouble. Rivals were closing in, his organization was crumbling, and he needed my help. The old me would have refused, seen it as an opportunity to prove dominance, but the new me saw a broken man who needed redemption the same way I had. I helped him. I didn't save him. I couldn't force redemption on someone who didn't want it, but I gave him the opportunity to change. "Why are you helping me?" he asked, confused. "Because someone gave me a chance," I said. "And because I believe people can change, even when they've been cruel beyond reason." Olivia sometimes asked me what I was thinking when I made that bet. I told her the truth. I wasn't thinking. I was performing the role of a powerful man for other powerful men, and I wasn't connected to the consequences of my actions. "That's what privilege does," she said. "It lets you be cruel without feeling the impact. But you felt it. You felt it because you actually saw me, and that's what saved you." I realized she was right. The moment I actually looked at her, the moment I truly saw her, the cruelty became impossible. Redemption wasn't something I had to work toward. It was the natural consequence of finally understanding her humanity. Today, Olivia runs a non-profit organization that helps invisible women, victims of abuse, trafficking, exploitation, become visible again. She teaches them that their value isn't determined by their appearance, that visibility is their right, that they deserve to be seen and valued and protected. I fund the organization, but more importantly, I serve on the board, and I use my resources and connections to fight against the systems that made women like Olivia easy to dismiss in the first place. We built something from the ruins of cruelty, and that something is genuinely beautiful. So that's our story, everyone. From a mafia boss who made a bet to seduce his ugly secretary, to a man who actually fell in love with her and spent years proving he'd changed. If this story moved you, if it made you recognize that beauty is invisible until you actually look at someone, please smash that like button and share this with someone who needs to know that they're not invisible. They're just waiting to be truly seen. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories of redemption and transformation. Now I want to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell me, did you believe the mafia boss when he said he loved her? Would you have forgiven him the way Olivia did? Tell me, actually beautiful. If you believe that invisible people are often overlooked because the world isn't looking hard enough. Tell me, finally seen. If this story reminded you that your value doesn't depend on being conventionally attractive. Tell me, redemption is possible if you believe even cruel people can change. Tell me, bet on love if you think his bet actually turned into his greatest blessing. See you in the next video. Remember, the most beautiful people are often the ones everyone overlooks.